Betsy Thompson, and I want to welcome you to number 9 in our series on overcoming and understanding codependency behaviors. Our lesson today is going to be on self-esteem. In Matthew 22, we read, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these 2 commandments." And so God gave us permission to love ourselves. Not only permission, but commanded us to love ourselves. Self-love is the prerequisite and criterion for our conduct toward our neighbor. It is the measuring stick for loving others, which Jesus gives us. I have Sharon with me. Welcome, Sharon. I appreciate you being here. If you'll remember on the lesson on feelings, we talked about you must get in touch with your feelings from the past before you can move forward. Before you can do the lesson on self-esteem, you must have done some of that to some degree, because before moving ahead and raising our self-worth, it is necessary to become fully aware of our reality and the forces of our past which have held us back, because you cannot give energy forward and backward at the same time. And so if you're pushing forward on your road to recovery and you're trying so hard to overcome the past and get on with it and get over it, but you haven't dealt with things from the past, you cannot do it. It will hold you back. In one of the earlier lessons, we have an exercise to do, and we suggest that you write down the way you see your past, if you remember that lesson.
Yes, I do.
And then we have you write down the way you wish it had been in your past. And then by that time, you've really done some deep thought and some deep thinking, and then write down the way your past really was. And it will usually be very different from the first time you wrote it down, because you won't tend to overreact to incidents in the past as much. And you do the same thing with your present circumstances. Write down the way that they are, the way you see them. Write down the way you wish they could be. And then write down, get into reality, and write down the way they really are. And when you have done some of these exercises, then you can start working on the lesson of self-worth.
Okay, Betsy, what is self-esteem?
Self-esteem and self-worth are what you think of yourself. And it requires a basic self-love, a basic nurturing, caring for yourself. A person who has a good self-esteem or good self-worth will not stay in abusive situations. They will not stay in bad relationships. They will not allow themselves to not eat properly, to not get the right sleep. They will take care of themselves. They will have fun. They will have a balance of work and fun. They will have good friends around them. This is a person with good self-esteem.
Are we born with this behavior?
Unfortunately, we are not.
Okay.
Unfortunately, self-worth is a choice, not a birthright. We are not born with a high self-esteem. If we were not raised in a family that gave us the tools that we needed to learn to take care of ourselves, to learn that it was okay to care for ourselves, then we won't come out of that family with a high self-esteem. We have to choose to find that on our own, to find the answers.
Okay.
There are 3 giant steps to take if we want to develop high self-worth. And the first one is to remove the toxic substance or behavior, and we're going to talk about that in detail in a minute.
Okay.
Number 2 is to look back and make new choices about old messages and feelings. And there we go, right back to lesson 2 again on feelings. We have got to learn to get in touch with our feelings from the past and our present feelings.
So feelings and self-esteem, it all goes together?
Yes, feelings are very important with self-esteem. We must develop new behaviors and feelings that enhance a growth of self-worth. And so as we get on the road to recovery and we develop new behaviors and learn to have healthy feelings, we will automatically begin to get some self-worth.
Okay, what do you mean by remove the toxic substance?
Okay. Codependents have addictions. They have either addictions to drug and alcohol and cigarettes, or they may be addicted to people, to relationships, to food, work addictions. Any kind of addiction that you have becomes toxic to the person that's addicted. And as long as you are in these addictions and the toxic effects are inside of you, you can't go forward in your journey on recovery, and you won't get a real good high self-esteem. So you've got to get over your addictions. You've got to overcome them, because the object of these short-term relievers becomes like a poison or toxic to us, and it keeps us from spontaneous, free, and authentic emotional response. It becomes an emotional toxin to us. It will block our feelings.
Oh, you're saying it'll keep us from thinking?
It will keep us from thinking healthy thoughts.
Okay.
And also, each person's, we've said this before, each person's recovery is their own journey. It will be up to you to surround yourself with people who will support your journey. You may have to find new friends. You can't stay friends with your old addiction buddies, because they will want to drag you down with them.
Okay.
The second one is look back and make new choices about old messages and feelings. Now, there is a warning about feelings. We talked a lot about getting in touch with your feelings and expressing your feelings and choosing appropriate actions from your feelings, but just expressing your feelings does not automatically cure bad feelings. So in other words, venting your rage to the universe might make you feel better for a while, but by itself, ventilation is no cure-all for the depression of stuffing your feelings. So we have to go a step further and learn how to express our feelings and take action for them, take the appropriate action.
Okay, Betsy, where does low self-esteem come from?
Usually, children who were born into families where parents were poorly prepared to give kids the care and attention needed for health growth is where low self-esteem comes from. Now, these parents did not deliberately withhold the facts from their children that would have given them high self-esteem. They may have been too busy establishing their own worth.
Oh, so they're not responsible for their kids having
Well, it was
low
not deliberate. They are responsible for it, but it was not probably a deliberate act. Some of them were children themselves. Some of them were born to parents who were unsure of their own worth. And so it's passed down from generation to generation. And of course, we've talked about this whole series is about breaking the cycle, about learning new ways of coping, new behavior ways, and teaching these to our children, even our adult children, and breaking that cycle. And so in these particular families where parents don't know how to have good self-esteem, children grow up too fast. They become adults very young because they're forced into an adult world. It is a fact that emotionally repressed and stoic parents tend to produce emotionally repressed stoic children.
Okay, can you explain that to me?
Parents who had very rigid rules in their family, the children will grow up and they will have rigid rules in their adulthood. They may have different rules from what their parents taught them, but they will grow up to be very rigid. Not just by the rules they were taught in their childhood, but simply by the example that their parents, that has been their role model, and they will tend to take on the same role models that their parents gave them. A child in this environment begins to fear feelings and emotions and tries to develop ways to control feelings. And this is another way that children grow up to be adults and don't know how to feel their feelings and how to express them. The possibility of denying our true feelings and our truth is a common problem for children who lived in troubled homes. Not being able to feel is the breeding ground for low self-esteem.
So it's important to feel your feelings.
We've got to if we want to recover from codependency. But we have talked about that low self-esteem usually will come from our parents. If our parents had a low self-esteem, they had nothing to pass on. It may have come from their parents, but our purpose is not to blame our low self-esteem on our parents, because often parents themselves were not given healthy doses of self-esteem. Their own parents may have suffered from poverty or persecution or oppression or prejudice or abandonment. There were probably very good reasons that they didn't have the tools to give us. They may have been poorly educated. They may have been barely literate, chronically ill, physically handicapped. We don't know what reasons they didn't have the information to pass on to us, but we do know that they tried to do the best they could for their children. They just didn't have the tools it took to give their children an atmosphere that promoted the development of high self-worth.
But the cycle can be broken.
The cycle can be broken. One of the best ways to break it is to have this information, to realize, to go back and think about our parents, where they came from, what their childhood was like, and how they got to where they were, and then we can start making changes. We know that our parents were ordinary human beings. They had problems of their own. They were not the villains of our past. We will be copping out if we blame our past on our parents. It's our responsibility to heal from our past. Low self-esteem tends to be part of the package when one has come from a dysfunctional family. A family where expectations are rigid and unreasonably high, where rigid rules, not emotions, were valued. People from such families stop developing emotionally at an early age. They were not allowed to be children. They were not allowed to express childish emotions. And now that they're adults, you would be surprised how many codependents are very, very successful professional people. Outside, they appear to be mature adults, but inside, they suffer the vulnerability of a child.
So they're hiding their feelings.
Still going through adulthood, hiding their feelings from childhood. You would be surprised how many adult children of alcoholics identify with this feeling of being totally grown up, totally mature, functioning in an adult, mature world, but inside feeling like a little child. They're going through life guessing at what normal is, because they feel like a little child, but they know they're an adult, and they've got to act like an adult. And they can get in touch with these feelings, get some healing, and catch up and become adult inside.
Okay, so they are confused.
Yes, very confused, like a little child. Codependents tend to live in the past or in the present rather than, in the past or in the future rather than in the present. In other words, they're always living in the past thinking, if only he hadn't so-and-so, if only my dad hadn't drank, if only my mom had been there for me emotionally, whatever it was wrong in their past.
Why can't they deal with the present?
Well, because they have not gotten in touch with their feelings from the past and worked through them.
Okay.
Or they may be living in the future, if only. Everything would be great right now, if only he would not come in and occasionally beat me, you know. But they have got to learn to live in the present, which is getting in touch with the fact that the reason, for instance, the reason he beats me is he's an abuser. And he's probably not going to change, so I've got to make a decision what to do about this. And so codependents tend to not live in the present, but kind of inside, they're always getting ready to get ready for life to start. And one day they wake up and they realize life is over. Life is behind them. And they let it go by, waiting for life to start by not getting in touch with their present circumstances. Codependents need to learn that this is it. Whatever's happening in your life at this moment today, this is your life. The show is on. The rehearsal's over. Life is here and now.
Oh, so they need to start taking control of their own lives.
Yes, exactly. Work through the control lesson and get over controlling others. To grow in self-worth, we must give up the fantasy of our memories and the convenience of seeing our past as all good or all bad, because probably there was some good in the worst past. There were probably some good things in it. So as we work through that lesson on feelings, and as we work through that exercise of writing down your past as you remember it, then writing it down again the way you wish it were, you will begin to get away from seeing it as all bad or all perfect, because nobody had a perfect past. And we will begin to see it in reality, and that's what we want to do, is just get in reality.
Face reality.
Yes.
Okay.
To develop a high self-esteem, we're going to have to make some tough choices. And one of the toughest will be to look for the truth in our growing up years and find our own sense of reality. We're going to have to give up the fantasy of possibly believing or remembering that there was one bad person in our life and blaming everything on that one person, or maybe attaching to a person in our life and thinking if it hadn't been for them, they never did anything wrong. We're going to have to give up that fantasy and just get in reality about whatever it was that happened in our past. And the last step was we will need to develop new behaviors and feelings that will enhance growth of self-worth.
Oh, does it take time to develop these new behaviors?
It certainly takes time. It is a lifelong journey. By the time you've worked through these 8 lessons before this one, you will begin to have a little self-worth. You'll begin to get an inkling of what self-worth is. You'll begin to want to take better care of yourself. You'll begin to want to get out of some of the abusive situations you're in. You'll begin to want to be around healthier people. And so even without you realizing it, self-esteem will have begun to set in.
Oh, so it'll start creeping in naturally.
Yes, creeping in. So while situations and feelings may be old, they're not forgotten. They live on in our attitudes, our thoughts, and our feelings. And they affect our day-to-day current relationships and choices. If we haven't gotten in touch with the past, dealt with it, put it in its place, and let it go, all of those feelings and thoughts about the past live on today and affect our daily attitudes, the way we feel about people, the way we feel about our circumstances. And we want to work through that and let it go, and then self-esteem can grow inside of us. We must do this. We must recover, or we will repeat the things we did in the past. We have a saying that we like to use in our classes. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And so people that come to me and they say, all I've had is bad relationships, I just go from one to another. They're always doing the same things. They're not making any changes. They're looking for the same types of people. And as long as they always do what they've always done, they're always going to get what they always got.
Okay, so they just looking for the same type of person.
Without realizing
Okay.
it. Another saying that we have that we enjoy saying is, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
Okay,
What
so stay
that means,
focused.
yes, exactly,
Okay.
Sharon. What that means is stay focused on your recovery. And if we hang these up on our wall or on our refrigerator, keep these little sayings in sight, it helps us to remember. I don't want to always do what I've always done. I don't want what I've always had. Or I need to keep my focus on my recovery. And so we do not have, as we look back on possibly abusers in our life or our past, some bad things that have happened in our past, we do not have the knowledge to sit as judge, jury, and executioner over people who may have hurt us in the past. Remember, we don't know what made them do it. We don't know what was going on in their life. Only God knows this. We relieve ourselves of the burden of carrying around hurt, anger, pain, and loneliness.
So we should just let it go? Is that
Once
what
we
you're saying?
once we get in touch with it and put it in its perspective, we quit blaming the other person. We may never forget it. We can't wipe the memory from our mind, but we quit blaming other people so we can go forward. We give someone else the freedom to live their own life, or sometimes to rest in peace. Sometimes our abusers are dead, and yet we still hate them for what they've done. We forgive them and let them rest in peace. And we allow them, if they're not dead, to work out their own behavior, feelings, and consequences, and God will take care of that. We learn to feel our feelings. There we go again.
Okay.
Feel our feelings from the past and the present and deal with them. Okay. It's interesting how all these lessons interrelate, and yet they all come from different publications. We learn to forgive. Forgiveness is a gift. And the first time I read it, I said, yes, that's wonderful. That just is such a freeing statement. And then I went on and finished reading it, that we give ourselves. And it's very humbling. When we forgive our abusers, we have given ourselves a gift. We have released their control over us. It's true that maybe in our childhood, for instance, Dad should have been able to pay more attention to us kids. Mom shouldn't have been so uptight all the time or whatever, but we learn to forgive. Now, be aware that on paper, this sounds easy for you and me to be sitting here talking about it. In reality, it is very hard, but it can be done. We will face many barriers and pitfalls on our journey to self-esteem. People are going to come along, and they're going to try to stop us. They're going to try to pull us back into old ways, but we can do it. And so people ask me many times, where does self-esteem come from? Well, it says it right there. Self-esteem comes from self. When you have a basic nurturing and self-love for yourself, you will get a good self-esteem.
Okay, so basically it's loving yourself.
Loving yourself. Someone else cannot give you self-esteem. They cannot give you
It comes from within.
Right.
Okay.
And, remember the scripture in Ecclesiastes, a time for everything. I'm not going to read the whole thing,
Yes.
but we're all very familiar with it. There's a time for everything. There is a season for every activity under heaven. Well, there is a time for giving up old ways of being and moving on. The moment is different for each person. There is no magical time when risk is easier. Each person's inside self knows the best time. So nobody can do it for us, but we have to do it ourselves in our own time. And we're out of time now. I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope you've enjoyed the information that we've passed on and shared with you. And if you'd like more information, write to We Are Not Alone, 185 Anthest Drive, Nashville, Tennessee. And thank you for joining us.
Hi, I'm Kevin. This is Kevin's Corner. These are my friends, Mario, Eric, and Caress. Our story today is going to be self-love. Betsy?
Thank you, Kevin. Self-love is one of the most important lessons in life. God gave us permission to love ourselves when He loved us first, and when He loved us enough to give us His Son. Let's hear the story on self-love about Jamie. Jamie, how did you skin your arm? Asked Mother. Oh, Mommy, that mean boy at school pushed me down. He pushes around everyone. Why does he do that, Mommy? No one likes him, and he doesn't like anyone. Jamie, he may not even like himself, said Mother, and that's why he can't like anyone else. You see, unless you have love for yourself, you cannot have love for others, because that is where love comes from. Jesus said it a long time ago. Love your neighbor, love yourself. You must believe that you are a good person. You must believe that you will grow up to be a good person. If you believe in yourself, others will believe in you. If we do not like ourselves, others will not like us. God made us. God loved us. God made it okay to love ourselves. Mother went on to say, the boy at school that pushes everyone around, he doesn't know that it's all right to like himself. He doesn't know that if he likes himself, others will like him too. Jamie was so glad to learn why the mean boy acted like he did. He said, I'm going to try and like that mean boy even though he doesn't like himself. Thank you, Mommy, for helping me understand the mean boy better. I hope someone tells him what Jesus said so he can like himself and so others can like him. Let's have some questions about self-love.
Okay, why do some people act like they do not like anyone, Eric?
Because they probably do not like themselves.
That's a good
Right.
answer. Okay, Kevin, can you love others if you do not love yourself?
No, Jesus knew that long ago when he said, love your neighbor, love yourself.
Oh, a good answer, Kevin. Mario, why can't you love others if you can't love yourself?
Because that is where love comes from inside you.
Thank you so much for joining us with our Jamie stories. I hope you've enjoyed them, and I hope that we'll see you again soon with another series of stories. Thank you, Kevin, for coming by. Let's see your pictures. Beautiful.
Thanks for coming to Kevin's Corner. See you next time. See you next